my fellow law enthusiasts, humans, it's FCA, fellow law enthusiasts, going to go over the Karen Read Aftermath Part 2. In Part 1, we covered what happened with a lot of the police officers and law enforcement involved in that case. I will link it below and in the cards. And right now we're going to talk about everything that happened on to Karen Read, her lawyers, and some other stuff happening. So first of all, a lot of financial information has come out. During the retrial, we had learned that the prosecution experts from Aperture Science were paid almost $500,000, over $400,000 to that company for the two experts that were in there. The first one was Shannon Burgess, who lied about his qualifications on his resume called CV, and he also had made several data points but chose to only use three or four of them that benefited what they were looking for the prosecution, instead of doing all of them to get all of the data, because confirmation bias. And then we had the other expert, Judd, who decided to say that it was possible for an SUV to fly off into space, because he's an engineer, and I guess that makes it excusable to say ridiculous things like that on the stand. But okay. Then we have that Karen Read has come out and said that she owes over $5 million. $5 million for her defense team. Between ARCA getting paid about $100,000, between their two experts for their experiments and data, then of course there was her large defense team. Okay, this part just like evaporated into whatever, so I gotta redo it. So she has to pay $2.5 million, and that is what she owes for her last 2 years of trying, or the last 3 years of trying to defend herself twice, because she had 2 criminal trials, and when we added Robert Alessi, we learned that he actually worked pro bono for her because he felt strongly about the case when connected with Yannetti. That was learned about because he was very gracious and went on the Emily D. Baker channel and did an interview with her. So exciting. And so she didn't have to pay for him when he got added to the team, which is very kind, because typically how lawyers get paid is every time you send an email to them, every time you call them. Sometimes they pay by the hour, sometimes it's by the half hour, sometimes it's by the communication. It just depends on how that law firm operates and does their billing. But they'll tell you, listen, and so every time she has to have a meeting, every time she has to get together for testimony, and anytime something happens in court, she has a legal right, Karen Read has the legal right to be there. So she had to defend herself with 2 trials worth of experts. So all those experts had to get paid again to testify, and that comes out of her pocket, unless they also are up there pro bono. And then we have that she has to defend herself a 3rd time in civil trial with a whole new set of lawyers. So that is just craziness. So yeah, when you have a big team of lawyers like that, and there were some other people who were on the team as well, who were not always mainstay front runners, who were doing, there's people who do behind the team legal work who also need to get paid out of those legal fees, overhead and such. So it's very expensive. And yeah, just needed, I don't know, like I said, I don't know where this part went. I went to go start editing and stuff. I was like, where? Oh, okay. So had to throw that in now. With Miss Little, Yannetti, and Alan Jackson, almost all of them, I think all of them were from different areas. Alan Jackson was from California, was from an LA office, and so all of them had to be, they had to pay for the special thing to be authorized to be in court in Massachusetts. So Karen Reed also lost her job as a job business analyst, what she was doing. And it's because when you're constantly in trial, you can't work. When you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day in court and meeting with your lawyers, it's hard for you to go to a job. And a lot of jobs, they don't wait to find out if you're guilty or acquitted. They don't wait for that. They're like, oh, we don't want that on our thing. We don't want a possible murderer on our team. You get let go pretty quickly in those cases, whether or not it's true. And she is currently fighting to get her phone and her car back. I don't know what car she's been using in the meantime. I don't know if she's had a rental and if that's included in her $5 million or if that's purely legal forms. And that is something, just for a little tangent, that is frustrating in this country. I don't know about other countries, but in America, it really sucks that you can pay for justice. A lot of people thought that's what happened with P. Diddy, because he was found not guilty on 2 of the more severe counts against him. And if you don't have the money or aren't willing to get into debt to have a legal defense team, and the prosecution, which is the government, the DA's office, the district attorney's office, they use tax dollars just endlessly to get whatever they need. And it's not that all facts and all evidence get put forth to the jurors. That's not what happens. What happens is there's a certain amount of data that has to be gathered, a certain amount of time, it has to be turned in a certain way, and there is a limit. And even if stuff comes up later, if there was a limit, you're not allowed to put it in. Criminal trials and civil things are different, but it just sucks that I think it would be more justifiable, it would be more justice giving if the government, if the prosecution was forced to only use the same amount of money available to the defendant to make it fair in the court cases, where, you know, it's like, okay, the defendant only has maybe a few $1,000s that they can spend on this case, and they have to have the state bring them a representative. Not that state representation is bad, but if they have to have someone appointed to them and they really only have a few $1,000s that they can play with, well, play with isn't the right term, that they can use for their court trial, then that's all the prosecution should be allowed to use as well. They should only have this, they should have access to the same things. That tangent will go on forever. Anywho, Karen Reed is in debt, and so she has a book deal coming out. Her and Alan Jackson have also have a movie deal, a scripted series deal coming out, because Alan Jackson was another star of the show. He's a fantastic storytelling style lawyer. And he wanted to be so snarky most of the time. He was allowed to be a lot more intense in the first trial, but the Judge Canone, was really trying to keep people like, this is in court. Please don't try to entertain the internet. Keep it in the courtroom. And so she has a book deal. I will link below to everything that I am telling you so you can double check it. I will also link to an article that I disagree with, because, you know, you deserve both sides as we talk about legal things. But somebody described it as a cash grab. Buddy, she owes $5 million. And you know what? That's just in her legal fees. And that's not including that she still has bills at her house to pay. That doesn't include that she still needs to have food. We've talked about this before. If you're like, well, aren't there rules about people being able to profit off of crime, etc.? Well, she's not been accused of a crime, right? So the Son of Sam laws and the Slayer laws don't apply here. Son of Sam laws are very, they end up going into arguments, and a lot of them get dismissed anyway. But the Slayer statutes and the Son of Sam laws, if you don't know, are things that are meant to prevent a convicted criminal from being able to make book deals or interviews or movie deals to tell their story, to profit from it. So a lot of times Slayer statutes or Son of Sam laws will say that if the convicted criminal does these things, any money or profit has to go to the victims' families or has to go to certain philanthropic or charitable places, because they do not want this person, they don't want to encourage crime, they don't want people to commit crime and then be able to make money off of it because they for selling their story. But that doesn't apply to Karen Read. She's not been charged with anything yet. Criminally, she's not been charged with anything. There are several civil lawsuits from the family, John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, which they are still minors, so they're actually under somebody else's jurisdiction with that, but they are listed as plaintiffs. So is John O'Keefe's mother and father and John O'Keefe's still living brother Paul. They are all saying that she should be held civilly liable for the death of John O'Keefe. The civil lawsuits in these cases are a much, much lower standard than in criminal cases, but there is no jail time associated with a civil case. That's for going to jail, getting arrested, serving a sentence. That only happens in a criminal case. In civil cases, it's going for monetary stuff. They want to get paid $50,000 for pain, suffering, and loss. And the standard for civil lawsuits for being held liable for the death of a loved one is preponderance, rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt is criminal. Preponderance of death of liability is civil, which means that it's more likely than not that this person's actions led to the death of this person. So what they're going to say is she was charged with drinking and driving that night. They are also going after the Waterfall and C.F. McCarthy's bars for third-party liability, because they served Karen Read and John O'Keefe alcohol, which led to this whole thing. And they are also claiming that she, when she was shaking and yelling at the 16-year-old niece the morning of and freaking out, even though the niece had already been through so much, that was trauma specifically to her. So they are seeking damages within that $50,000 for that as well. And we also had, in relation to this, Lally testifying. Now, Lally was the main prosecutor in the Karen Read original trial and was a secondary lawyer who did a few minor witnesses, who questioned a few minor witnesses, minor as in lesser witnesses, not under 18 witnesses, in the second trial. You gotta be careful with wording. But he was under oath for Brady violations, for not turning over evidence. When did he receive evidence? And it was also in relation to Trooper Proctor. And these were actually for a tangentially, not actually related to Karen Read case. It was for a case that happened in 2021. I believe it was the Gardner case. Again, I will link to everything below so you can watch it for yourself. And in this testimony, the man just said there were 6 warrants. We'll talk about this main part. It'll cover the rest of the testimony. He was questioned about that Trooper Proctor had issued 6 warrants. When were those 6 warrants turned over to the defense? This case started in 2021. This is 2025 when he testified just this previous week. So where is it? Where are the 6 warrants? When did you get the information for the 6 warrants? He still doesn't have them. Why didn't you follow up with him? Well, I believe I did. What? But yeah, so that, like, but then they used the information from the warrants that they did not have in a grand jury indictment. He didn't review them. He didn't have them to review. And if he didn't have them, he couldn't turn them over to the defense. So the defense, I mean, in a grand jury, the defense isn't present anyway. But if there's a case going on and that person has a lawyer, or when they do get a lawyer, the prosecution has to turn that stuff over. How can you turn over something you don't have? Why didn't you ask about it? And his answers were just repeatedly, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Bro, don't you have notes? Didn't you keep a file on this? Did not work out well for him. And it really looks like that the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, which is the one related to Canton, Boston, etc., in Massachusetts, it really just sounds like they're a little bit of a mess and that they don't know what's actually going on, because that doesn't happen in, like, the stuff that has been happening in the Boston, Massachusetts, Canton, Massachusetts cases don't happen in other cases. Like, all the rare things keep happening here. Like, Massachusetts, you need to work on that. I mean, the whole justice system needs a little work, but you guys need help when you have your district attorney, your assistant to the district attorney, your main guy who doesn't know where search warrants are and still doesn't have them 6 years later. So, maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe they're kind of like fashion designers where they need stuff to be messy. They need everything hanging out of drawers because that's how they function and do stuff. It's like, it's a mess to the outside world, but it makes sense to them. You know, it's organized chaos in their heads. Maybe it's like that. Meh. All I'm saying is it did not look good. And those are the things that have been happening in the Karen Read trial. So she got some civil lawsuits that she's going for. She is trying to get those dismissed. She has a whole new set of lawyers that she has hired who are criminal lawyers, and civil lawyers are not equivalent. So she's hired some new lawyers for her civil lawsuits, and she's really just trying to get those dismissed because she's trying to go with, I was already acquitted. I was shown not to be the negligent person. I dropped him off. And yes, I was intoxicated, and I'm already getting charged for that. She can't be charged for the same thing twice. And again, that's why the wording is different. She's not getting charged for his murder in the civil lawsuits. She's getting charged for being negligently responsible for his death. Had her actions not occurred, he would not have been in that situation. So that's what they're trying to prove there. But yeah, I know that there's a lot of craziness happening. If there's any other updates, I will follow up on that. Whatever happens with the civil lawsuits, we'll check up on. I want that book. I'm getting that book. When I find out what the book is, I'm pre-ordering it, I'm getting it. And we'll go over that. And that is what I have for all of you. I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, my lovely humans.